In the quiet village of Grey Hollow, surrounded by dense forests and rolling hills, there stood an ancient stone bridge that had been part of the landscape for generations. The bridge crossed a slow, dark river that flowed silently through the valley, its waters reflecting the moonlight like a sheet of black glass. During the day, villagers crossed it without a second thought on their way to nearby fields and woodland trails. But once night fell, the bridge took on a completely different presence. The elders of the village often spoke about the strange stories connected to that place, tales that had been passed down through families for many decades. They spoke of a mysterious visitor who appeared at the bridge every night at exactly midnight. No one knew where the visitor came from, and no one had ever seen the figure leave. Because of these stories, the bridge had become a place most people avoided after sunset. For Mira Lawson, however, the legend only made the bridge more fascinating. At 16 years old, she had always been curious about the world around her. She loved exploring the forests near the village and listening to the old stories told by her grandfather beside the fireplace. Mira had long chestnut-brown hair that she usually kept in a loose side braid, and her hazel eyes always seemed to carry a spark of curiosity. While most people in the village believed the legend without question, Mira often wondered if there was a deeper explanation behind it. Perhaps the midnight visitor was simply a traveler passing through, or maybe the story had grown larger with every retelling. One cool autumn evening, when the sky was clear and the moon hung bright above the valley, Mira finally decided to find out for herself. She pulled on her forest green hooded jacket and quietly stepped out of her home while the village slept. The air outside was crisp and still, and the path leading toward the bridge was lit only by pale moonlight filtering through the tall trees. As she walked deeper into the forest, the quiet sounds of the night surrounded her, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of an owl, and the steady flow of the river somewhere ahead. Mira's heart beat a little faster as the outline of the old stone bridge slowly appeared through the mist. Mira stopped beside a moss-covered tree near the edge of the bridge and waited quietly in the shadows. The stones of the bridge looked even older up close, worn smooth by years of wind, rain, and footsteps. Small patches of moss clung to the edges of the stone railing, and the dark river below moved slowly through the valley like a silent ribbon. Mira glanced up at the sky and noticed the moon had reached its highest point. Midnight was close. In the distance, the faint sound of the village clock tower carried through the quiet air. When the final chime echoed across the valley, a soft fog began to rise from the river below. The mist drifted across the surface of the bridge, curling around the ancient stones like slow-moving clouds. For a moment, nothing happened, and Mira wondered if perhaps the legend really was only a story. Then she saw movement through the fog. A tall figure slowly stepped onto the bridge from the far end. The man moved with calm and steady steps, as though he had walked this path countless times before. He wore a long charcoal coat that reached nearly to his knees, and his shoulder-length black hair shifted slightly in the gentle breeze. In his hand he carried an old lantern that glowed with a soft pale blue light. It was unlike any lantern Mira had ever seen before. The glow was cool and steady, almost like moonlight captured inside a glass cage. The stranger walked to the center of the bridge and stopped, holding the lantern carefully in front of him. The mist around him seemed to glow faintly in the blue light. Mira watched closely from her hiding place, her curiosity now stronger than ever. The midnight visitor from the village legend was real. Mira's attention quickly focused on the strange lantern the man carried. The light inside it flickered gently but never dimmed or brightened like a normal flame. Instead, it shimmered with a calm blue glow that reflected softly against the stone walls of the bridge. When the man raised the lantern slightly, the light spread across the surface of the river below. To Mira's surprise, the water seemed to respond. The dark surface of the river began to ripple slowly, even though there was no wind blowing across it. The blue glow stretched across the moving water like strands of glowing thread drifting through the current. Mira leaned slightly forward, trying to understand what she was seeing. It almost looked as if something beneath the water was reacting to the lantern's presence. The man remained completely still at the center of the bridge, holding the lantern carefully as he watched the river below. His gray eyes reflected the pale glow of the light, giving him an almost otherworldly appearance in the fog. For a few quiet moments, the scene felt strangely peaceful, yet there was a tension in the air that Mira could not quite explain. she began to realize that the stories about the midnight visitor might have been based on something far more mysterious than anyone in the village had imagined. Mira carefully stepped closer to the bridge, hoping to see the lantern more clearly. The fog made it easy to move quietly, and she believed the stranger was too focused on the river to notice her. But as she shifted her foot onto the stone path, a small twig snapped beneath her boot. The sound echoed sharply through the silent night. The stranger immediately turned toward the noise. His movements were calm but quick, and within seconds his grey eyes had found Mira standing near the edge of the bridge. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The pale blue glow of the lantern illuminated Mira's green jacket and the loose chestnut-brown braid resting over her shoulder. Mira expected the man to be angry or startled by her sudden appearance. Instead, he looked at her with a quiet curiosity, as though he had been waiting for someone to step forward from the shadows. The mist drifted slowly between them as the two stood facing one another on the ancient bridge. "You shouldn't be here this late," the man said calmly, his voice steady but not unfriendly. Despite the strange situation, Mira felt her nervousness slowly fade. There was something about the stranger's presence that felt more protective than threatening. The man introduced himself as Elric Vale. As he spoke, his voice carried a calm confidence that suggested he was used to the quiet responsibilities of the night. He explained that the lantern he carried was not ordinary, and neither was the bridge they were standing on. For generations, someone had been chosen to guard this crossing. According to Elric, the river beneath the bridge held ancient secrets hidden deep below its dark waters. Long ago, strange forces had been discovered beneath the river, forces that could rise to the surface if left unchecked. The lantern's pale blue light had been created to keep those forces from awakening during the silent hours of the night. Every midnight, the guardian of the bridge walked to its center and raised the lantern so its light could touch the water. The glowing reflection acted like a barrier, ensuring whatever rested beneath the river remained undisturbed. The stories told by the villagers were not meant to frighten people for no reason. They were meant to keep curious travelers away from the bridge after midnight, protecting them from dangers they might not understand. Mira listened carefully as Elric spoke, her curiosity slowly turning into respect for the strange responsibility he carried. After explaining the history of the bridge, Elric grew quiet for a moment as he looked down at the lantern in his hand. The blue glow flickered gently inside the glass, but Mira noticed the light seemed weaker than before. Elric admitted that he had guarded the bridge for many years, but the time had come for someone else to take his place. The lantern, he explained, could not simply be given to anyone. The next guardian needed courage, patience, and a willingness to face things most people would never believe existed. It also required someone who truly cared about protecting the village. As he spoke, Elric looked directly at Mira. She had come to the bridge searching for answers, but she had also shown bravery by stepping forward when most people would have run away. Elric believed that curiosity and courage were exactly the qualities needed to protect Grey Hollow in the years ahead. Mira felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility as she listened. The quiet adventure she had expected had suddenly turned into something far greater. As the night slowly approached its end, the fog around the bridge began to thin, and the faintest hint of early morning light appeared beyond the trees. Elric gently extended the lantern toward Mira. When she wrapped her hands around its handle, the blue glow brightened slightly, reflecting softly in her hazel eyes. The lantern felt surprisingly warm, as if it recognized her presence. For a moment, Mira stood quietly at the center of the ancient bridge, holding the strange light above the dark river below. The water rippled gently beneath her, but nothing else stirred. Elric stepped back and gave her a quiet nod. The responsibility of guarding the bridge had been passed on. Without another word, he walked slowly toward the far end of the bridge and disappeared into the fading mist of the forest. Mira remained where she stood, the lantern glowing softly in her hands as the first rays of morning began to touch the valley. From that night forward, the legend of the midnight bridge visitor would continue to live on in Grey Hollow. But now, the mysterious visitor would be Mira Lawson.